You may think your hotel is already green, but are you green enough for today's eco-conscious traveler? Welcome to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast, your destination to learn from hospitality professionals on the value and opportunities sustainability will bring to your organization. It will put more heads in beds and lower costs at the same time. We are your hosts and sustainable hospitality experts, Kathy McGuire and Amy Walls.
I'm your host, Kathy McGuire. In this episode, we talk with Jo Hendrickx, founder of Travel Without Plastic. They assist hotels in reducing and eliminating single-use plastics and offer reusable alternatives to those products. During this interview, I make the mistake of saying travel with plastics, so please know that I meant to say travel without plastics. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Jo Hendrickx, who is the founder of Travel Without Plastics. Jo, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. So to get started, tell us a little bit about your organization, Travel with Plastics.
So we founded in 2017, actually, even though personally I've worked with hotels in plastic reduction since 2011. But it was really as a response to the increasing concerns around the amount of plastic that was being used in hospitality businesses. And we were approached by a number of hotel companies and asked to help them to reduce single-use plastic whilst still meeting guest expectations and meeting hygiene expectations. And that culminated in creating some small toolkits with a personalized focus for those specific companies. And then actually it grew from there, that we realized we could do this in a generic way and put some information out there via various digital means and tools so that more people would be able to access those. And it really started to grow in 2018 when, you know, the word single-use plastic became in the UK anyway, it was kind of crowned word of the year. And there were a lot more documentaries out there that were bringing it to light and moving the priorities up on the CSR agenda. And that's where we found it really took off and has continued to do so since 2018.
Oh, that's wonderful. How many hotels are you involved with, and what kind of feedback are you receiving?
There's probably about, I'm directly involved with around about 150, 160. So that would mean hotels where we've got connections either in the procurement departments or with the sustainability leads. In some cases, they're quite large chains, and in other cases, they're just small individual hotels. But there've been a lot more that have downloaded our free tools or that have worked with the digital tools that are available on the website. Not everybody tells us about their impacts. Not everybody stays in touch necessarily if they've just downloaded the digital tools. But the feedback's been brilliant in that, you know, they really didn't expect to get quite so much help, quite so much support. And rather than just telling them what they could do, they've really picked up on how we help them to know, how can we do this? How do we engage our staff? How do we get the message across to our guests as well, so that they can be part of that journey? So it's been really, really positive.
So I noticed on your website, you have lots of resources. You have a hotel guide, you have a toolkit, workshops and webinars and other offerings. And I didn't look at the price of all of them, but the ones I looked at seemed very affordable to download these resources. And they look quite professional and detailed.
Yeah, that was kind of the plan, really. So we didn't want everything to be free. And there was a reason for that we do find that people are more inclined to pay attention to something that they've paid for, even if it's just a small amount. But there's this kind of mentality, I've paid for this and I need to use it. And we find that we get most of the feedback from the people who have paid for the toolkit or for the guidance documents. And we didn't want to create them just to kind of sit in an inbox or sit on somebody's shelf and they don't use them. But that's what the feedback has been, that when, they're quite surprised that for the cost, they have actually got so much detail in there. The toolkit in particular, we're revamping that for 2021 so that all of the different component parts of the toolkit are put together into one manual, which is actually a lot more user-friendly. It's easier to follow the instructions, and then the guidance documents and some of the workshop plans and other things you get in the toolkit, they're kind of separated out in different folders. So we responded to some of that feedback, actually, that there was a lot in there and it maybe just needed to be reorganized or restructured in a way that was more user-friendly for the hotels and their staff. So we're just about ready, I hope, at the end of February, beginning of March, to launch with the new manual that should hopefully be a lot easier for people to implement.
That sounds terrific. One of the things I was wondering about, like a case study, maybe you could give an example of, what changes were made at a particular hotel and the significance. I noticed on your website that you have on there was one hotel that had 512,000 single-use plastic items in 1 year, and that was just from breakfast. Now, when people look at the P&L, they don't see how many items they're buying. They just see what did they spend in a particular area. And so I'd like for you to talk about that, and then I'm going to share one of my experiences with you.
Great. Yes, it's interesting. I think when you look at it from our perspective, we really do see it from the consumption in terms of the number of items. And it's important for us to get that across to hotels, because it can be quite shocking when you add it all up. And when you look at, just a breakfast service, and then you think in the room, you've got all of the miniature bottles and amenities, you've got plastic laundry bags, you've got all of these other things. And if you order them out of habit, without questioning whether it's the right thing to do or whether you could do things differently, that's when we notice things just carry on and stay the same. But actually, when those numbers face you as a procurement department and you think, gosh, we've got to do something about this. And, how can we make the changes that still enable us to, that it's not going to be too expensive for us, or the replacements, if we need to replace, aren't going to cost us a lot more. But also looking at from an environmental perspective, the changes that you can make. Do you need all of those single-use plastics in the first place? Because often, like we say, habit is the main factor. And you can do a lot by eliminating certain types of plastics or certain types of products, rather than replacing them with other single-use products. And that's kind of where the cost savings come in and where the environmental difference is made. So instead of having single-use crockery and cutlery at the breakfast, just to change those for ceramic plates and for stainless steel cutlery, and immediately it requires an upfront investment, but if you look at it from a long-term perspective, then you can really see that return on the investment, and you would immediately see the difference in the amount of waste that's being generated. So we try to get people to look at it from both sides.
Right. What kind of guest feedback are some of these hotels getting, especially now? Everybody's into, disinfecting and hygiene, sanitation. How are travelers and guests reacting to some of these changes?
We're seeing different reactions in different parts of the world, actually. And I think it depends on the originating market of the guests. So for us, we're based over in Europe, as you know. The Northern European market, they're very sustainably focused anyway. And many of them are quite upset to find that hotels have been forced, in some cases, to go back to single-use plastic because of hygiene requirements. They were very upset to see individual jam and butter and those sorts of things at breakfast, when before it had just been available in a kind of bulk format and people would serve themselves. So that was quite interesting. On the other hand, we see that in some cases that customers feel more comfortable with single-use plastic because they feel that they're the only people to touch that product. and therefore it kind of makes them feel safer, that it's more hygienic. But actually, when we look at some of those myths, and it's not always the case that single-use plastic is more hygienic. It's more about the processes that sit behind a hotel operation rather than the product itself. So it's been very different in different customer demographics to see the response to that, and it's quite difficult to quantify who and which markets in particular are the ones that are pro single use, should we say? But definitely those against would be the Northern Europeans as a standout market by miles in our experience.
I was wondering if for people who, travelers and hoteliers alike, if there could be both offered. You have all of your reusable items out there, your coffee cups and glasses and things like that, but then also have an area where you have some paper cups or plastic cups for those who are a little, leery about that. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I do. I think at the end of the day, the hotel's role is to, try to influence and encourage people to change in a friendly way, but not to be so insistent, particularly if that's going to be a very big change for that customer. So by using some really positive communications that would demonstrate the benefits and the safety and give reassurance about those reusable products and have those available is great. But I think to have a reserve, if necessary, maybe not on show, maybe the single-use items could be on request if people feel that they need them, so that they're not the automatic first choice. And we kind of design it in such a way that the easiest and most affordable and sustainable and safe option is actually this reusable option. But if you feel that you need single use, then please ask us, and make sure that if staff need to provide single use, particularly with amenities in rooms, that there's quick access to them, and that people aren't made to feel ashamed for asking for them. It's still part of the service. And I think that's the way to take people on that journey with you. And so having both options, I think, is definitely a good way forward for those that aren't quite ready to take that full leap.
Right. I really encourage hoteliers to take a look at how many items of plastic they're actually purchasing and throwing out, or hopefully recycling some of them. I worked with a hotel here. I'm in Palm Beach County, Florida. And this hotel is a well-known branded hotel. They're right on the beach. And when I took a look at all of their plastic items, they had 2.6 million plastic items they were throwing out because they didn't have a recycling program at that time every year. And they were just shocked, blown away. They just had no idea, because they don't look at those numbers in that way. So one of the things I also wanted to ask you about is, do you see this as, especially with the changes that have occurred this year, do you see this really building this year? And do you have any, two-part question, and do you have any hotels you're working with in the United States?
So I think it's definitely going to build. I think even with everything that's happened in 2020, it's been really great for us to see that there's still an appetite to put sustainability at the top of the agenda. For hotels that have been forced by legislation to take on single-use products, in some cases, they're making it very obvious that this is temporary. And as soon as they're able to, they intend to go back to reusables and to change processes and those sorts of things. So that makes us feel quite happy, quite confident that, people really do still want to eliminate waste, which is great. One of the things that we are concerned about is the kind of trend to eliminating single-use plastic by replacing the products with single-use something else. And so we're not necessarily reducing waste overall, we're just changing that waste stream. So we're very, in a friendly way, but very clear with hotels to say, really the first course of action should be to reduce overall waste And when you're looking at alternatives, try to choose those that are compatible with the waste facilities in your destination, because there's not really much point in us solving one problem only to create another problem. We need to kind of think a bit longer term about that, and it's worth taking the time to make a more informed decision. We don't currently work with any hotels in the States, I don't think. I need to go into the compartments of my brain. We've got quite a lot of hotels we work with in the Caribbean. I've got some great connections in the States. And I was actually over there, gosh, it was 2 years ago now, I think. And we were up in, I think it was more the part of northern Florida. And together with an organization there, we held a workshop day. And yeah, that was all around single-use plastics, meeting suppliers of alternatives there, and that was really interesting to see that there's a growing concern, a growing interest in that, but not directly. We're not working with the States at the moment.
Well, hopefully we'll see this trend continue and really grow, and I truly hope that your organization has much success. And I encourage anyone that's listening to this to go to your website and take a look at your resources. That's Travel with Plastics. Is it .org, I believe? Or
it's
.com?
.com.
.com. Okay, travelwithplastics.com. And I want to thank you, Jo Hendrickx, for speaking with us today, and wish you all the best over there in the Canary Islands. It's such a wonderful place.
Thank you very much. It's been great to join you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like a free consultation on becoming a much greener hotel, please visit us at sustainablehospitalitypodcast.com.